You know that feeling when someone seems perfect on paper, but every time you get close, something pushes you apart? It can seem magnetic, but also confusing. Today, we're going to talk about the particular characteristics and types of people that both dismissive avoidants and fearful avoidants are attracted to. It's good to know that dismissive avoidants and fearful avoidants are drawn to different things. Let's start with dismissive avoidants. These are people who grew up learning that relying on others leads to disappointment. For them, independence is like oxygen. Their caregivers might have discouraged emotional expression or rewarded them for being the kid who never asked for help. As a result, they built their identity around self-sufficiency. So what attracts dismissive avoidants? First and foremost, independence. Dismissive avoidants are magnetically drawn to partners who have their own lives, their own goals, their own hobbies, their own friends, and their own space. They find clinginess suffocating, but someone who can match their self-reliance, they find intoxicating. Research shows that dismissive avoidants often appear confident, charismatic, and warm at first. They're attracted to that same energy in others, people who seem put together, accomplished, and low drama. But interestingly, they're simultaneously attracted to emotional depth they can't access themselves. Being attracted to it doesn't mean they will match it. This brings us to one of the most studied patterns in attachment theory called the anxious-avoidant trap. Dismissive avoidants are often unconsciously drawn to anxious partners because of what researchers call complementary attraction. Anxious partners bring expressiveness, emotional availability, and pursuit, all things the dismissive avoidant struggles to access within themselves. That emotional depth feels alluring, even fascinating. At the start, the anxious partner's enthusiasm makes the avoidant feel special without requiring them to open up. But this attraction contains the seeds of its own destruction. The very thing that drew them in, emotional availability and pursuit, eventually becomes what they'll call neediness. The relationship then enters that classic push-pull cycle where no one gets their needs met. Let's be clear about what dismissive avoidants genuinely respond to. They want partners who respect their need for space without taking it personally. They're attracted to people who offer practical support rather than emotional processing. Someone who fixes the leaky faucet instead of asking about their childhood wounds is perfect. They gravitate toward partners who are patient, who won't demand emotional disclosure, and who can appreciate their consistency and reliability, even if it comes without verbal affection. They do feel love deeply. They just show it through actions, not words. Now let's talk about fearful avoidance, because this is where things get truly complex. Unlike dismissive avoidants who genuinely believe they're better off alone, fearful avoidants are caught in an internal war. They desperately crave connection while being terrified of it. These patterns often develop from inconsistent or traumatic caregiving. One moment, love was present, the next, it was withdrawn without warning. This creates adults who associate intimacy with unpredictability and even danger. So what attracts fearful avoidants? What's uncomfortable but true is that they're often drawn to what feels familiar, not what feels safe. And for many fearful avoidants, chaos feels familiar. Research on fearful avoidant attachment reveals something crucial. They tend to be attracted to people who seem not okay in some way, traumatized, stuck, or unavailable. Why? Because it feels familiar and therefore, paradoxically, safe. They often take on a rescuer or fixer role, believing that if they can just heal this person, then they'll finally receive the safety and love they've always craved. But it's painfully ironic that this strategy keeps them perpetually exhausted while never addressing their own wounds. They often take on a rescuer or fixer role, believing that if they can just heal this person, then they'll finally receive the safety and love they've always craved. But it's painfully ironic that this strategy keeps them perpetually exhausted while never addressing their own wounds. Fearful avoidants typically hold negative views of both themselves and others. They see themselves as unworthy of love while viewing others as potentially harmful or abandoning. This creates a unique attraction pattern. They're drawn to people who provide intensity and passion, those initial overwhelming feelings of connection. Yet when that person wants to get closer, the fearful avoidant panics. Too much intimacy triggers their fear of being hurt. Too much distance triggers their fear of abandonment. This is why fearful avoidants often end up in situationships, casual arrangements, or relationships without labels. It's not always by choice. It's a way to have connection without the terror of full commitment. Here's the good news that attachment researchers consistently emphasize. Attachment styles aren't permanent, they're learned patterns, which means they can be unlearned. For dismissive avoidance, healing means recognizing that emotional needs aren't weakness. For fearful avoidance, it means understanding that chaos isn't love. Stability can feel boring at first, but it's actually the foundation where real intimacy grows. Whether you're an avoidant recognizing your patterns or someone loving an avoidant partner, awareness is the first step. Understanding why certain people feel magnetic, even when they're wrong for us, gives us the power to choose differently. Because ultimately, what we're attracted to often reflects our wounds, and healing those wounds is how we finally attract, and are attracted to, what we actually deserve. If you found this video insightful, like and subscribe. I'm Molly from myavoidantx and allattachmentstyles.com. I post attachment style and relationship content weekly.